My name is Tammy Schamuhn. I'm a registered psychologist, registered play therapist, and the co-founder of the Institute of Child Psychology. Today, we want to present you with another interview from one of our top authors that we recommend, and one of the top 10 books we often suggest that parents purchase in terms of their journey in parenting and child psychology. Today, we have Dr. Payne Bryson. She is the co-author of the book, The Power of Showing Up. Tina is a psychotherapist, founder, and executive director for the Center of Connection in California. She's a New York Times best-selling author, which also includes the book Whole Brain Child, No Drama Discipline, and The Yes Brain, which we almost always recommend in our courses as resources. She's been featured on NPR, Good Morning America, Time, Redbook, and the Huffington Post, amongst others. This is probably the pinnacle of my career, is interviewing Dr. Payne Bryson. And so I'm really excited for her to share this book with you. Now, what's really interesting that I loved about this book so much was how it really brings together the attachment research, interpersonal neurobiology, mindsight, as well as understanding how our stories get projected and mixed up with our kids' stories. So part of our journey at becoming wonderful parents and raising resilient kids is understanding our own baggage when we grew up and the stories that follow us, and sometimes how we can get those a little bit mixed up and how we can then put those stories onto our kids. So it's helping kind of guide us in making sense of our own childhood, and then being able to say, my kid's story is going to be different, and I'm going to change the ending so my kid doesn't maybe have that same story. Or understanding how our expectations can sometimes come from our childhood versus it being about who our children really are. So I think Dr. Siegel and Dr. Bryson really bring this together well. And what I also really admire is how they took some very complex subjects such as neuroscience and attachment research and made it very digestible for parents, for the layperson to read. It doesn't sound like a psychologist wrote the book, honestly. They're some of the top experts in our field, but it was simplistic and from the heart, which is I really, really loved about this book. So I'm very excited to introduce Dr. Payne Bryson as she talks about her book, The Power of Showing Up. Tell me a little bit about your inspiration for writing this book.
So one of the kind of hidden stories about this book is that actually when Dan and I were writing The Whole Brain Child, when we got to the conclusion and we were writing the conclusion, we basically said the thesis for this book. We said, look, yes, it's like we can integrate our child's brain through the kinds of relational experiences we give them, and here are all these strategies and skills. So we kind of walk through all of that. But in the conclusion we wrote, really the most important thing is that you develop, your child has a secure attachment to you, and here's what that looks like. And it was so powerful that our editor said, I actually think you need to pull that out because it's distracting from all, it's so good, but it's competing with the other stuff written. So let's pull it out and do something else with it. And even before Whole Brain Child, I had been Dan's student and I was raising 3 boys of my own. And attachment science, when I learned it, which is different from attachment parenting. This is 50 years of cross-cultural research at how mammals really seek proximity or closeness to their caregiver in order to survive. And so when I learned about that and about how the repeated relational experiences wire our brains for relationships, that our history is not our destiny, that we, regardless of how we were parented or the kinds of relationships we had growing up, we can have whatever kind of relationship we want with our children as long as we reflect and make sense of those experiences, right? And when I learned about all of that and I started studying those patterns in my own family, and I started really looking at this science, it was so revolutionary for me as a human and as a parent and as a wife that I was like, people have to know about this. So I wrote my dissertation on attachment, way before these books. And so this was the book that was like waiting for the right time. And I think now that we're in a global pandemic, this book is really important for any relationship at any time. But I think given the state of our world right now, even more a message of hope, because not only is history not destiny, but as mammals, we have this built-in instinctual drive to connect with each other when we are in distress. That's what the purpose of the attachment system. So we have this inborn natural instinct that helps us survive and be resilient. And so, you know, really at the end of the day, we can mess up a lot as parents. As long as we repair, it can be really even beneficial for our kids. And what I mean by repair is saying, oh, I'm so sorry I yelled. That was really not okay. I wish I had done that differently. Will you forgive me? Like making things right with our children.
Learning how to make amends, because none of us are perfect. And that's what I actually really love you highlight in this book. At the very beginning, from the outset, you disarm parents by saying none of us are perfect, and you do not have to be a perfect parent to raise a healthy child.
No, and we mess up all the time, and it's really, like I said, it's beneficial for our kids when we have those ruptures, as long as we go and we repair with them. But what's so exciting is that, you know, really there are lots of times as parents, and particularly right now, where we might not know what to do or say or how to handle something. And really the framework of this book is kind of like a North Star. It can really guide us, because here's what we know. I'm going to give you like the thesis of the book in just a couple sentences.
Yeah, that's perfect for our viewers. Yeah, so they know what they're getting.
Yeah, so basically this is based on 50 years of cross-cultural research in attachment science. And the conclusions of that science are the following. The best predictor for how well your children are attached to you is not whether or not you had secure attachment, but whether or not you have reflected on your own experiences and made sense of them. Okay, so that's great. That's super hopeful. That means you kind of are like, gosh, my parents didn't show up for me. I was really alone, especially if I was upset. I was by myself, or my parents, I couldn't count on them, you know, or they didn't make me safe. And we really kind of reflect on the ways our needs weren't met, and we make sense of them, and we talk about them and talk about how that impacts who we are now in our relationships. So that's an ongoing process forever, right? That's like an always.
That's a beautiful, for therapists out there, it's a beautiful narrative approach, like rewriting your story, making sense of the story and where it started, and then writing a new ending, essentially.
That's exactly right. That's exactly right. And it really connects up to some of the stuff we wrote in The Whole Brain Child, which is where you have a coherent narrative that brings elements of logic and linear, you know, left brain naming language things, and a sense of self and time, and connected to your body and connected to emotions and autobiographical memory. And when those come together, you have a coherent narrative, and it's and that's why we can parent better once we've done that, because our brains are integrated. But the second big thesis of this work is that one of the best predictors for how well kids turn out is that they have what's called secure attachment to their parents. And so the way Dan and I like to talk about that is by providing kids with the 4 S's. So that is, 1, helping them be safe. So the first S is safe. That's protecting them from harm, but it's also making sure we are not the source of fear and pain for our children. Some of the ways we might do that during discipline moments, or other times if we scream and yell, or we're not gentle with their bodies, or we fight with our significant other or the child's other parent in really, you know, aggressive, hostile ways. Those are all things that really undermine a child's sense of safety. So we really want to make sure that we're protecting them from ourselves in those moments, but we're also repairs when we do mess up, right? So that's the key for safe. And just as a quick little aside right now for pandemic, one of the ways we can help our kids feel safe is by using safety-based language instead of using threat or fear-based languages, like we're washing our hands so that we can be safe. Much better than we're washing our hands because it's dangerous if you have germs on your hands and you could get sick. So we're really using language to reinforce to our child that we can be safe, and that we can actually, that as parents, they can trust us to keep them safe, right? Instead of flooding them with more fears and anxiety.
Yeah, being that safe haven, circle of security kind of language.
Exactly. I love circle of security. And really that's the idea too, is that in our home, we can create our relationship with our child and our home environments to think of them as safe havens. To think of them as the place to come and just be and know that you're loved, and that even though the world might feel like a giant storm, your home and your relationship is really protection from that, and a place to just know that you're safe. The second S is seen, and this is the hard one. I think this is the hardest one, and this is really about tuning into the mind behind the behavior and really looking at what emotions and feelings, thoughts, even bodily sensations your child is experiencing. What is happening for them in the moment? So let's say your child is saying like, you know, I want ice cream.
Mm-hmm.
And focus just on the behavior. You say, no, you can't have ice cream, and don't ask me again. You've been bugging me all day about this. And if you ask me one more time, you're never having ice cream the rest of your life. Like, we come up with these funny threats. No, we can't.
We never follow through with. Yes.
Yeah.
Are we pushing ourselves?
That moment, and we still can say no to the behavior, but we always want to say yes to what their internal experience is. We can say, no, we're not having ice cream tonight, but you really wanted it. It sounded good, and it's okay. You know, if you're are you disappointed? That's okay. It's hard to be disappointed, right? So we can say no to the emotions, even if saying yes to the emotions, even if we're saying no to the behavior. The key here is we want our children to have a pleasant experience when they share themselves with us. So if they're falling apart, or they're complaining, and we criticize them, we say, you're complaining about everything, you're so lucky, you're so spoiled, I don't know why you're fussing about this, this isn't a big deal. That feels not good to them. So then over time, they stop sharing themselves with us. So we really want our children to say, she gets me. She loves me and supports me for who I am, not who she wants me to be. So it's really about tuning into your child's internal state and being present to whatever's happening for them.
Yeah, and it doesn't mean we give in. That's not what you're saying. And some parents assume that's what that means. And it says, no, you can be present with them no matter what.
Yeah.
And know in you. I would say this comes from Gordon Neufeld. I have a no in me right now, but that doesn't, it's still okay to feel sad about my no.
That's exactly right. And so then the third S is soothed, and that's really about nurturing, helping, comforting. And what the attachment research tells us is that at our worst, when we're most in distress, when we're feeling stress, anger, fear, sadness, all of those things, that is when we most need connection. And what's interesting is that when our kids feel those things, oftentimes it looks like bad behavior. That's how it comes out. And so then we respond with really negative emotion too. And we actually amplify their distress instead of being the opposite of that, as that safe haven. So soothing really looks like I'll give you a triple S. My son didn't want to get out of the bathtub when he was little. And so I just said, you know, it's time to get out. And if you're not going to get out, I'm going to help you out. So as I'm helping him out, I'm still providing that first safe. I'm not being scary and yelling, but I'm also reinforcing a boundary, and boundaries help kids feel safe. And then I say, you're so mad about getting out of the bath. You hate getting out. As I'm lifting him out, I'm saying, you hate getting out of the bathtub. You're so mad about that. So that's seen. Then soothed is I wrap the towel around him and I say, it's okay to feel really angry, and I'm right here with you. I will listen, and I'm here if you need me. Do you need a hug, right? So it's really just about helping him. And then if there is a discipline issue, once they calm down, that's when we address the behavior, because that's when they're more open to learning anyway. And then the fourth is secure, and that is really when we help our kids, not perfectly, but repeatedly feel safe, seen, and soothed. Their brain wires to know that if they have a need, someone will show up for them.
Absolutely.
And they expect their friends and their romantic partners to do that too, so they have healthier relationships. But even more than that, Tamara, their brains get wired to be able to show up for themselves, to keep themselves safe, and to see and understand themselves, and to soothe themselves, so that they can be secure in knowing that they can show up for themselves, and that if they have a need, people will show up for them. And so this isn't just about, you know, being like a sweet parent. This is really about changing the brain to provide all kinds of benefits for mental health, relational health, and even mental health. And so I just really want to encourage parents that the other thing the research says that's so hopeful is it's never too late. If we start helping our kids feel more safe, seen, soothed, and secure in our everyday moments, their brains are changing too. So it's never too late. We can start feel that by showing up for them and being present to whatever is happening.
We love neuroplasticity. That's a very, very good thing.
Exactly.
I just want to end this interview because I know you have a meeting with this beautiful quote from your book. It says to model kindness, respect, and self-care. Apologize when you miss an opportunity to connect or you mess up. Then you don't need every advantage, and they don't need a super parent. They just need you, authentic, flawed, and fully present you. So it's my favorite. I get a little choked up when I hear that, because I think there's such a pressure for us to be perfect as parents, and we screw up all the time because we're human beings. I screw up every day. I think about that. But at the end of the day, we don't have to. We just need to show up, and then we need to just repair and then be there for our kids. So thank you for being so inspired, you and Dan, for your inspiring work in our field. We're really looking forward to your keynote presentation at our online conference in November. So thank you for your time, Tina. I really appreciate it.
Thank you. And I
look forward to your new book called, so it's about babies. Help me again with
The Bottom Line for Baby. And it's really about helping us. It really gives the bottom line on over 60 topics based on the research. So as we're trying to make decisions as parents and we hear all this competing advice, this breaks it down and says, here's what the science says. And sometimes the science doesn't give any advice, but we talk about it too. And I know we need to go, but I just want to say to you, Tamara, thank you so much for all the wonderful work you're doing in the world. And that's my favorite quote from the book too. And I get teary every time I say it. Yeah. And especially now when life is really hard for parents right now, really, really hard.
And complicated. It was complicated before COVID, and then we put a global pandemic. Let's mix that into things. And
yeah, a lot of time, and I'm hearing from parents and I feel this too. We have days where we don't feel like we can give our kids much. We just try and it's hard. But I think to go to that point to say, what your children need from you is you, flawed, imperfect, sometimes falling apart. We can just go, okay, I can live with that. So thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you, Tina. You have a great day, and we look forward to November.
Me too. Bye-bye.
Bye.